And now, coming at you from the 5-Star Physique Studio in Knoxville, Tennessee, this is The Drop Set with your host, Darin Starr.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 203 of The Drop Set. My name is Frankie MacGregor. I am a client of Darin Starr's. I am located in Omaha, Nebraska, and Darin has graciously agreed to allow me to interview him for this episode. Darin is here. Why don't you say hello?
Hello, everybody. This is going to be a trip. I'm scared. I'm in the hot seat.
You should be.
Well, and I had one stipulation before we agreed to this, and that's that I could not see any of your questions in advance.
Yeah, that surprised me because I feel like you share interesting details about your life in the podcast and in feedback that you've given to me. So we're going to go all the places.
Cool. I'm ready for it. So this is your episode, so I'm just along for the ride. So if you want to give us an update on like TV that you've been watching or all the crap that I normally talk about, hey, go for it. Or if you just want to dig right in, that's cool too. I'm cool. I'm here for whatever.
I'm going to dig right in, but I may add some editorial comments throughout.
I would expect nothing less.
Okay. So we're going to start with general and then start to get more specific. The first thing that I'm curious about is, where are you from originally?
I was born in Salem General Hospital in Salem, Oregon in 1977.
And your family is still there, right?
They're in that general area. I have two brothers, one of which still lives in Salem. I mean, still, he has moved to, Kentucky and Texas and been back, so he's back in Salem. My parents live about 20-ish miles south of there in Albany, and then I have my oldest brother lives about another 40 minutes south of there in Springfield. So all the family is in that I-5 corridor in Oregon still.
And what brought you to Knoxville?
Well, my wife, actually. Yeah. I had moved to Asheville, North Carolina, when I was 30-ish, 33, something like that, with a girlfriend at the time. And that was my chance to like, hey, you know what? I've never lived outside of this 20-mile radius. So let's go see the world a little bit and go live in North Carolina, of all places. And so that was an interesting experience. That relationship didn't last. I stayed in Asheville for a couple of years and then met my wife and eventually moved the 2 hours back west to Knoxville. So, and that was in 2013.
Okay. 2013. So 9 years.
Yeah. Almost a decade. And that move was the point at which I started doing online coaching full-time exclusively.
Okay.
Because when I lived in Asheville, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say more questions about that in a bit.
Okay, I won't jump the shark then.
Okay. I recall you saying, I feel like it was in a podcast episode, that your biggest regret is your second marriage. I'm assuming that's not the one you're on right now.
No. Oh man, that would get me. I don't want to get that number wrong. No. My second marriage, yes, I'm on number 3 right now. So okay. I've had 2 strikes, and this is the one. This is the home run. So, yeah, number 2. That was, man. If you want to go there, I'll go there. But let me just say that was a fucking mess. Oh my God.
Nah, we can leave that one.
Okay.
You can talk about that in another episode.
I'm happy to go over anything, but I'm also happy to leave that behind. So.
Okay. I also have had 2 strikes, but I think I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going for a third.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Because, you don't always, it depends on how well you learn from your mistakes, I think. And I learned pretty well. So, yeah. The third time's the charm, definitely.
Okay. I am curious about all these letters after your name. ACSM, AFPA, CPT. What do all of those things stand for? And is there one of them that you value more than the others?
Oh, okay. So that means I'm certified by the bar in 14 states. No, it means none of that. So actually, it's a good point. Like I should probably go and revise that part of because that's in my email signature, right? I need to go and revise that because none of those are accurate anymore because those are all certifications that have lapsed.
Oh, wow.
Because they are completely and totally irrelevant for what I do right now.
Okay.
What they mean is ACSM is American College of Sports Medicine. That's a personal trainer certification. That's the CPT, Certified Personal Trainer. And what was the AFPA was the other one? American Fitness Professionals Association. I have a general and a sports nutrition certification through them.
Okay.
Or I guess I could say had because they've lapsed. You're supposed to do continuing ed and pay them stuff. And like the ACSM certification, the two things that I remember from that, other than their textbook showing, it was like a 400 page textbook and about 10 pages talked about exercise mechanics. And they had like a picture of a squat that was like start, finish. And it's like someone standing, someone down at the bottom of a squat. And that was it. And it was like, the model and then the quote unquote trainer who was watching who was in like khakis and a polo shirt. It was that kind of a thing. But the things that I remember taking away from that were how to use a sphygmomanometer, a blood pressure instrument, which let's see, how many times have I used that in practice? Oh yeah, that would be 0. And how to calculate METs, which is a form of work. You might see that in like on some old treadmills instead of like speed or calories, they might say how many METs you're doing or whatever, and talk about a worthless calculation there too. Those were the things that I remember from that. So talk about completely and totally irrelevant for what I do now. Like no thanks. So
these certifications are only things that if you were going to go be a personal trainer at a gym or some corporation, these are things that they would want, right?
And they want that specifically because if you have that certification, then you can be insured for their facility.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And that's really it. They don't even want the certification so much as they want to know you're insurable.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, doing what you're doing, as long as you have the knowledge and the expertise, it doesn't really matter if you have the certification.
No, and I'm not in a facility, so I don't need to be insured. What I do need to be is like incorporated in some way so that my personal and professional assets are separated. But that's the only thing that I have to worry about.
That makes sense. In the past, I think I remember a podcast episode where you started to share a little bit about your early days in the gym lifting. How old were you when you first started hitting the gym?
I just have to say I get anxiety whenever you reference something I said on an old podcast. I'm like, oh man, of all the stupid shit that I've said. This is episode 203. Keep in mind, I've had a lot of opportunities to say some really dumb shit.
And I've only listened to half of them, so you might be pretty safe.
Okay. Whew. All right, as long as it was the good half. I was like, I worked out a little bit in like my later teen years, and it was when I was 20-ish. I got a membership at Gold's, and I went with a roommate of mine, Jonathan, and we went regularly. And then we would always go out and have like, we would go to a restaurant afterwards for our post-workout meal. I mean, we were dumb. We had no idea what we were doing or anything like that. Like we were the people that I go into the gym right now and I'm like, get out of my way. Oh my God, you idiots. Like that was 100% us for a good while. I started to get more serious after a little while, and I was like reading magazines and stuff because this was like very early days of the internet. And so like, going through all the like Muscle and Fitness, Flex, Ironman magazines and stuff because I was really fascinated by it. I've always thought that bodybuilding is cool, even though it was like worlds away from where I was. But I was like, yeah, that's kind of where I want to be. So I just started learning a little bit. I got more serious about it. He stopped going to the gym, and I kept going by myself. And then I moved to a different place and joined another gym, and then I joined 2, and that's when I started kind of going to different places based on what I was doing on a given day, and that's when I was like, okay, yeah, I'm kind of hooked at this point.
Cool. Yep, I understand that. How many times have you competed, and how old were you at your first competition?
I didn't make it until I was 29 or 30. I've done six.
Okay.
And a couple of those were like really rinky dink, like unsanctioned affairs. Like those are less common now, but if you are like on a military base or something like that, you'll find like the base puts on a show. It's not affiliated with any organization. That was not me. It was like, oh, the gym's putting on this show or something like that.
Okay.
And so they would like get a crappy little venue somewhere and go put it on there, that kind of thing. And it was like the first time I did that, and clearly like the first time I tried to compete, I failed. Like I didn't make it to the show. And that happens. That happens all the time where it's like you just ass out and it's like, this is the show I'm doing. And then 6 weeks into it, you're like, okay, apparently I'm not doing that because I suck at this. Like I can't keep my act together. So you gotta, like I say with everything, you have to suck at something before you get good at it. And you gotta fail before you succeed.
Well, that makes me feel a lot better.
Yeah, I had several false starts before I actually made it. And then competed a handful of times. I think 5 times, culminating in the Charlotte Cup in 2012. And then I kind of realized, like, man, I really like prep. I like going through it. I don't like anything about show day at all. Like, I hate the waiting around. I hate the way it's structured. I don't really like going up and arbitrarily being judged by people I don't know on how I compare to everybody else. And so I'm like, I'm going to keep doing this and helping other people with it, but I'm going to take a step back for myself until last year when I did it and had a little different perspective last year where it's like the show was, it was better run. It was like there was less waiting around and just like sitting around with your thumb up your butt all day. That's just the way it was organized. It was a little bit more intelligent that way. I was very comfortable just because I'm a major introvert. I have social anxiety. It's like crowds backstage. It's like, I don't like that. And I was much more just chill, like, okay, here we are. And like, I placed horribly and like, I'm okay with that. That's fine. It's like, the whole point was to come back in and put my feet back into the pool. And I did that. And I was happy with how I showed up. The judges didn't like me for whatever reason. I still don't know what that reason is.
Oh, you didn't ask for feedback?
I did ask for feedback. It was ignored. All of my emails were ignored. So that's why I kind of think, because I know other people got feedback. That's why I'm like, I think they got something out for me. And I don't know if one of the judges he heard the podcast or something like that, where I talk shit about the NPC all the time. And maybe he took that personally. And if so, it's like, that's fair. I don't have that big of an audience. So I kind of doubt that. They just didn't like me. And talking about this right now, it's compelling me. So I'm going to post something on Instagram in the next few days that's a side-by-side of me and a guy who beat me by several spots. And, I have a pretty fair opinion of where I sit in the realm of like, physique. Like, I don't think I'm all that. I ran circles around that guy and it's not even close. And he beat me by like 3 spots. And there's no angle from which he is like within 5 years of where I am. And again, I don't have a super high opinion of myself, but like it was very clearly his first show and he did not prep very long for it, but he beat me. So I just want to post that and be like, not so much like, hey, screw this guy. I don't know who he is. He's probably a nice guy, but just like, you got to take what the judges give you with a big grain of salt.
Yeah, and I remember that. I don't know if it's the same guy I'm thinking of, but I remember looking at the pictures and seeing this other guy and going, gosh, I hope that guy didn't place because he doesn't look like he should be up there yet.
Yeah.
Not that I know anything about judging.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, you don't really have to know too much. Like whenever I show those pictures to anybody, it's like they can know nothing about bodybuilding and it's very obvious, like, wow, he beat you? Really? I'm like, yeah, he did. So, it's just the way the only guy that I beat in both classes was a guy who I swear is Vladimir Putin's stunt double. He looks exactly like him. An absolute dead ringer. And I'm wondering, like, maybe I just beat him because he looks like Putin. I don't know.
I'm surprised they gave him a weekend off to go compete.
I know, and here of all places too. This was before the Ukraine invasion, so he had a little bit more free time then, probably.
Oh yeah. Now they've called him back into service. Do you have a favorite bodybuilding organization? I have a list here of like 6 of them. I don't know if there's more.
6. There's about 30 that I'm aware of. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a new one. It's an alphabet soup. They crop up all the time. Favorite is hard. That's like
The
picking
ones that
like
you don't
your, and it's kind of like, what's your favorite part of hell? It's like they're all hell.
Okay.
But I think, I mean, the NPC is the biggest one. So I would say, in a way, they're my favorite because they give people the greatest opportunity to compete. And the more people who compete, the more people need a coach. And so therefore, the NPC has the biggest impact on my bottom line, if I just put a dollars and cents value on it. From an organizational standpoint, though, I think the OCB, which is a drug-tested organization, they're probably the most well-run. They put on the most consistent quality production. Like, you'll find NPC shows that take place in some middle school theater or something like that because they were able to get it for super cheap. And it's like, wow, this venue is just not equipped to host this kind of an event at all. The OCB shows are always at a good venue. They're always well run. There's always a pretty decent level of competition, even if the shows are sometimes a little on the smaller side. I just kind of like the way that they operate. And they also I think their schedule for 2023 for the whole year is already up versus the NPC. If you look, like, I was trying to help a guy find a show for like spring of next year, and they have nothing up in the Northeast region for the NPC, like nothing. So we're just guessing, but I think the OCB is probably the most well-run in my experience.
Okay. Good to know. I'll keep my eye out for their
These
shows.
are good questions. You're kind of sprinkling over a little bit of everything here. This is great. I like it.
Yeah, and then I'm hoping that you'll just kind of fill in the blanks for the rest. So
I can talk a lot. I got no problem with that.
So how and when did you decide to become a coach?
So funny story here. So I went to school for civil engineering. First at Lynn Benton Community College in Albany, and then at Oregon State in Corvallis. And
I remember you saying you started working in the field, and I can't remember quite what it was you didn't like about it, but I remember
everything.
telling
everything. Yeah. So it was actually in my junior year, at the end of my junior year, it was an internship. And there was an internship program, and there were a whole bunch of benefits that you could do and I went back to school when I was like 30. So I found the classwork really easy. Like, the first time going to college right out of high school, I was a music major of all things. And like, I was in college algebra, and I got it like a D- or something like that. I'm like, why do I need college algebra? I'm a music major. And so I lasted like one term in college before I dropped out. So going back when you're 30, you're a little bit more mature. Like, I was a very immature 18-year-old. But it was so much easier. I'm like, okay, college algebra, sure. Geometry, sure. Calc 1, 2, 3, 4, infinite series, multivariable. Okay, no problem. That's fine. Just aces across the board. And it's easier when you apply yourself. Physics, no problem. Statics, dynamics for the engineering courses, easy. It was work, but it all made sense. And I was loving it. I loved the coursework. It was fun. And so I got this internship, and it was with a company where I should look and see if they're still around, a company called Vestas, which is a wind energy company based in Portland. And so they made turbines. And so it was like the design of, like, one of the projects that they had me work on was helping design a support for a turbine blade that would be used on like the back of a truck when they're trying to transport it somewhere. Like, one little piece supports. And if you've seen one of those turbine blades, like, they're massive. They're like 60 feet long.
I have. Yeah.
But it was, that company was kind of like falling apart from the inside. Like, there was a lot of conflict. It was kind of a toxic office environment. And my mentor there kind of gave me the breakdown. He's like, yeah, if you want to actually do some real engineering work, you probably need at least a master's degree. And I'm like, okay, hold up. And so I actually stopped that internship early. I'm like, I can't do this, because also I had to move up to Portland for that, and I hated living in Portland. I just absolutely hated it. I know everybody's like, I love visiting Portland. I'm like, yeah, living there is a different thing. And at least for me, I didn't like the Portland's a smaller big city, but it was the biggest city I'd ever lived in at that point. Still is, actually. And so I took a break. I took a semester off
Mhm.
from college. I'm like, I like working out. Let me get a personal trainer certification. And that was the end of that. Never went back to school.
Cool.
Yeah.
Found your path.
So everybody has a circuitous path, I think, to get where they're going. And mine
Yeah.
took a lot of twists and turns, and it took a long time, but I definitely ended up where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, that's my philosophy is you at least have to pick a path, even if it's the one you don't end up on, it'll get you to where you're supposed to be. So
It's like
but
with anything. Yeah.
that reminds me, I read an article in Country Living this morning about the 40 cheapest places to travel to, and both Knoxville and Portland were on that list. Do you have any response to that?
Portland is probably cheap because of all the people leaving it. Because it's
Yeah.
like, I mean, it has gone downhill since I have moved away from Oregon, 15 years ago. Like to go
Wow.
back now, you fly into Portland, which I will be going there next month to visit my family again. And you get a car, and as you're driving out of town on I-205, it's like left, right, just homeless tents as far as the eye can see everywhere, right on the interstate. And like that didn't used to be like that. I don't even go downtown. I don't have any reason to, but
Right.
it's a mess. It's a mess.
Wow.
Knoxville, to be honest, I don't really have anything bad to say about Knoxville. Like it's great. Um,
Awesome.
it kind of feels like home, and not just because I've lived here for a while, but like it feels homey. And it is cheap. Like housing is cheap. I was bragging to my parents about gas prices here the other day. It's down to like $3.39 a gallon. So um, everything here
Yeah,
is kind of cheap.
I think you posted a picture maybe on your Instagram story a couple weeks ago, and I was shocked that the gas was cheaper in Knoxville than it is even in Omaha. Usually we have the cheapest.
Yeah, it's always cheap here. And I remember at some point, like when prices were really low, when the pandemic was going on and nobody was driving anywhere, I used some like fuel points and stuff, and I almost got it down under $1 a gallon. I came
Wow.
very close. It was like $1.09 a gallon or something like that. Um, but the cool thing about Knoxville also is it's structured in a way. I live in West Knoxville, and everything that I could ever possibly want, I can get to within 15 minutes from here. So like, any restaurant I want, any grocery store I want, Guitar Center, Home Depot, Lowe's, 4 different Gold's gyms, it's like 15 minutes away. It's like lots of options.
Is there a Whole Foods where you are?
Yeah, but I don't go there. That's
Too
probably
bad.
about 20 minutes from here. I have to venture past the point of no return as far as traffic is concerned.
Ah,
Yeah, so there
that's
are
too
some
bad.
dicey spots. I'm like, ooh, if I got to go there, man, I got to pick my time, right? Because traffic around here can suck. But in my little bubble, it's usually very manageable.
Okay, gotcha. So more about your work as a coach.
Mm.
You'd be willing to share with us how many clients you have, or like on average, what's a normal load for you?
Hmm. It varies, as you can imagine. It can be quite volatile, and so it can be as low as 50 and as high as 120.
Wow.
Which seems like a
Okay.
lot, but then you also think like, well, that's all I do. It's the only thing. So if I'm at the max of
Okay.
120 and I split it up, 5 days a week and take the weekends off and I have everybody spaced out, that's like, checking in with about 24 people a day, which seems like a lot.
Yeah.
But when you figure a day is 8 hours, like it's not that much. And I've gone over that a couple times, and that's when I start to feel like, okay, I'm starting to lose the plot a little bit here. Like I'm getting busier than I want to be. And if I can't remember something about a client's plan off the top of my head, like some basic detail, I'm like, there's too much stuff in my
That's
head
when you
right now.
know.
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
it's kind of easy. Like I know like roughly like where your caloric intake is at, just off the top of my head. And as soon as I start to lose sight of
Okay.
that, and I have to like, I don't know, what's her name again? I don't know. Like that's a problem. And thankfully, I've never
Okay.
been like that. And I also, there's a certain quality of response that I want to give people. And if I ever find myself compelled to answer an email with one word, that's how I know I'm stretched too thin.
Okay.
Because every question always deserves a full answer that covers all the bases, I think.
Those sound like Healthy boundaries.
Yeah. Stuff
Do
you learn over time.
Do you know how many clients total you've had?
Oh, I can tell you.
You've
What
Okay.
what I can do is I can pull up my past clients folder and I can tell you how many entries there are in there.
I figured there must be.
1,183.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great.
So that's people that I have worked with that I no longer work with. There are a few
Okay.
clients in here that I like worked with in person. This is going back like way. I'm like, who are those people again? And some of these people, like, I worked with them, like I wrote their initial plan and then never heard back from them after that ever again. Like that happens not a lot, but more often than you might think. Like somebody gets the plan and they're just immediately like, oh, fuck this shit. No, I'm not doing that. Like that immediate buyer's regret. And I'm like, hello, no response ever. But yeah, 1,183 past clients.
Okay.
Oh.
And I'm guessing that list probably doesn't include like friends and family members that haven't, like, that you helped out for free.
It often does, because like my mom has a folder in here because back in the day I like wrote up a little like at home workout plan for her, and so I saved that. That was from like 2012 and I still have that. Why? Because I'm OCD and I can't help it.
I think it counts. It does.
I had a client recently who came back and she had been away for 7 years. And the first good sign is immediately when she emailed me, I'm like, oh, you're back. Awesome. Cool. Like I remembered her. And like I remembered particulars about what we had done before. And like I had all of her stuff saved. I'm like, okay, so 7 years ago, here's where we left off. And she was like, you're insane. I'm like, yeah, pretty much. I can't help it.
No, I think it's appropriate. I get it.
Got to keep good records.
I would do it too. Yeah. Is there an average amount of time that a client sticks around, or is it just all over the board?
Wow, it is all over the board. Like I've got a few clients here, Dave, Max, I think are probably my two longest ones. I think I've been working with them for 6 years uninterrupted.
Okay.
Which, they deserve some kind of a medal of freedom for that or something. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot. Like I said, some people, they don't even last a week. I would say on average, it's kind of like gymnastics scoring. You throw out the high score, you throw out the low score, what's left. Probably 4 to 6 months, something in that range.
Oh, okay.
That's a total guess. I have no data to back that up at all.
And do you think that, like, what do you think is the reason that people drop out after that time? Like they just wanted to try it and they're good, or they're just like, this is too much for my life. I can't do it.
Oh boy, I could write a book on this question. I've worked with some people, and these are almost the most frustrating ones, where they go at it for like 4 months and they're doing really well and they see some good progress. And then they're like, okay, I'm good with that. Thanks. Like, we're just getting started here, man. Like you got all this potential and you're good with that. Oh, that's disappointing. But you can't make somebody want something that they don't want. Oftentimes, I mean, let's be clear, like what I ask people to do is not easy. And some people are not cut out for it. And they try, and a lot of people realize after some time, like, it might not be that I'm not cut out for this, but I don't want to do this. And I'm like, that's fair. Like it's got to be important enough to you that you're willing to do the hard stuff and see the value in it and not treat it like it's a burden. And that's that's a certain personality type. And I always try and coach that a little bit. Like I try and tell people, like, a lot of people would kill for the chance to do something like this, to make, to be, in a position where they can, afford to make how their body looks down to the very little detail a priority. That's a cool thing to be able to work on. So if you can get people to see that as the positive and not just think all the time about all the food that they can't eat or whatever, and all the work that they have to do, and realize, like, if you don't like working out, this probably isn't really going to work for you too much. Like you can only force it for so long.
For me, I mean, I don't like drinking and I don't like sitting around in bars. And so I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? I'll go to the gym. That's my entertainment.
And let's be clear, it can be very entertaining.
Oh, yes.
as long as
Especially
those
if
people
you're
aren't in
at,
your way.
Right. Well, they often are. Or the funny things do. What's the chain? Planet Fitness. Like,
Oh yeah.
I'm the worst. I'm like a gym Karen. Like, people try to save their Smith machine with their hoodie, and I'll go tell on them. Or there'll be like a group of guys sitting on a bench, and I'll go use the lat pull down, and they're like, we're using that, and I'm like, okay, but you're not right now.
Like,
and I can hop on here and do a set, and we can take turns.
Like you're not using it, you are adjacent to it. Let's be clear. And I have found myself, I've actually done this a couple times, and I was kind of proud because I'm not usually an asshole to people openly, but I tell you what, it's kind of cathartic when you are to walk up to somebody and say, hey, how many texts do you have left? They're like, what? How many sets do you have left? But you get it in there just that once. Like, will you get off your damn phone and be done with this machine already? You bastard. Like, I'm so sick of waiting on you. I've been watching you from 75 feet away for the last 5 minutes, just wondering when you're going to be done with that. Please hurry.
Right? I know. I've done that too.
My blood pressure is rising.
Okay. Let's take it back down a little here.
Let's
see. Oh.
Serenity now.
Do you know the ages of your youngest and oldest clients currently?
Yeah, my youngest client is 15. And
nice.
and she actually just competed about a month ago, actually, and did really well.
I didn't know you could compete that young.
Yeah, in her first OCB show up in New York State. So, and I've actually got another high school student that I'm working with who is actually, she's on the women's wrestling team at her school, and so she wants to build muscle for performance but also get help cutting down so that she can make weight for wrestling. So
cool.
That's newer. I've worked with some teenagers before. 15 is the youngest that I've ever worked with, so that's kind of interesting. And I have to watch myself, like when I'm doing check-ins and stuff, like I'll make a lot of cultural references, and I'm like, oh, there's no way that she's old enough to get that. Oh, dang it. Like you can't make a Seinfeld reference to a 15-year-old and have them not think you're an idiot. Like, it's not going to work. My oldest client right now is 67. And actually,
okay.
I just sent him his first plan yesterday, actually. So
oh, wow.
I have worked with a couple people in their 70s in the past.
Okay.
And different concerns there. The diet for someone in that age bracket is going to look very different. And there's always additional medical concerns. There's usually some health concerns, et cetera, that kind of stuff. So,
in what ways is the diet different?
Typically somebody that age, your metabolism slows down. They just don't eat as much. And so for somebody that's in like the 20 to 50 age bracket, very generally, I've got a certain number that's in my head just based on their demographic information, like gender, age, height, weight, et cetera. Like, their calories probably should be in this general range to maintain, this general range for a deficit, et cetera. You got to throw all that away when you're dealing with somebody who's 65, 67, because the numbers are going to be very different for sure.
Okay. On July 2nd, you had, I don't know if it was an Instagram or a Facebook post about your client named Josh, and you called him, quote unquote, captain of your consistency crew. I just wanted to know, what are the other crews you have? Like, am I on the what the fuck are you doing crew?
oh, that's great. I was not prepared for this question, but let's see. This could be creative. This could be creative. Well, let's see. I do have a few, and so this might be an airing of grievances here, but we're going to go with it.
That's okay. It's good.
The first thing that comes to mind is the late crew, the people who are always late with their check-ins. There's a special place in the blackness of my heart for those people, because. Man, I really like sticking to a schedule. And when somebody else doesn't, it's like, I feel like it's a personal attack in some ways. I feel like I've been personally offended. Yeah. So I get over it, but there are people who are consistently late. And it kind of rubs me the wrong way just because I do everything possible to consistently be on time to the point where if I can count on less than one hand the number of times I haven't gotten somebody's check-in back to them the same day, and it's been because of typically like a death in the family or something like that. So it's like I take my schedule very seriously. So the late crew, that's there. Consistency crew, yeah. The all business crew, the people who their check-ins are just like devoid of detail, not a lot in there, but they're always doing all the right stuff. It's just like, yeah, we're on autopilot here, and it's like their check-in literally could take like a minute. It's like, okay, yep, we're good. I barely even have to look at anything. I know we're doing it all right, and that's lovely. That's a very small crew, very select company there. There is like a high maintenance crew, and I would say those are the people who tend to write what I would call like novella for their check-ins, like multiple pages of notes, which is often good, unless sometimes it starts to go quite a bit off topic, and then I got to reel them in a little bit. At that point, I'll actually like copy and paste their check-in into a text file and just delete big chunks of it that aren't relevant, and then look at what's left. And oftentimes it's like, oh, okay, there isn't really a whole lot here. Okay, cool. Like, yeah, your work situation sucks. There's nothing I can do about that. Find a new job if you need to. Okay, cool. But yeah, those are the ones that jump out.
Okay.
I feel like this is a little bit of
it's like they're confusing you with their therapist, or maybe they need a therapist.
Well, and I clearly I'm a terrible therapist, because a real one would charge a lot more than I do per hour. But that is like, I joke about it, but that is a small part of what I do. Like, legitimately, it's like helping people kind of work through some very basic shit. And oftentimes I'm just like the third party. It's like, whoa, step back and take a look at what you're really doing here, or what you're really giving yourself crap about, or why you're being so hard on yourself here. Like, you got to be reasonable. And so just helping people see things a little bit more fairly is often all they need.
About how you in some basic capacity service people's therapists, I think.
Yeah, and it's not my favorite thing, but it's kind of necessary, because a lot of this, like, I have a coach as well, and sometimes I need just not really like a therapy session, but just like a little like, hey, help me out with this. I'm overthinking this, and I kind of know I am, and just kind of part of my job is to kind of help people keep their heads on straight as much as anything else. I wouldn't say that's therapy so much, because that undersells what a therapist does, but certainly I'm not qualified to do much of anything. And I've worked with people that like go into like how their marriage is terrible. I'm like, there's only so much I can do. Like, what do you want from me? I'm a fucking bodybuilding coach, It's like, keep in mind who you're talking to here. And also, like, my own marital history, I'm like, I don't know if I should be giving anybody advice, okay? So don't listen to me.
Right.
It's tricky. So I try and help people as best I can, understanding that there's a line I don't want to cross where they're starting to think that they should be getting more from me than I'm qualified to give them.
Right. Gotcha. And I mean, it makes sense, because you do ask, what's the biggest thing causing us stress in our life right now? So to some extent.
Yeah, and managing that is a big deal. And if you ignore that completely, it's like there's only so much I can do about it. But part of it is just like helping somebody realize what it is and making them kind of confront it themselves.
Yeah.
I have nothing to add. Period.
All right, we're going to move on. Oh wait, no, I have one last coaching question.
Okay.
And then we're going to move on to the fun stuff.
Oh, dear.
What would you say are your clients' rights and responsibilities in this relationship, and what are yours as a coach?
Oh, wow, that's tricky. Rights and responsibilities. Well, their responsibility is to be honest and open. And if they don't do that, don't hire a coach. So beyond that, I'm not really sure what responsibilities they have. Like, be honest, communicate, be transparent. Don't put on a brave face. If something sucks and you're suffering, like, let me know. And you've done that with me before. You're like, hey, time out, fuck this shit, we need to change something. And I mean, that was overdue and the right call to make. Absolutely. Their rights, I mean, it's kind of like the inverse. Like, their right is part of my responsibility and vice versa. Maybe I think there's a little bit of overlap there. Um, their rights are, first of all, like privacy. Like I work with married couples, et cetera, and like if you want to talk about each other's plan amongst yourselves, great. I'm a firewall, so whatever you say to me doesn't make it to the other person. And like you send me your progress pics, great. I don't post those. A lot of people are really worried about that. And
Yeah.
so respect privacy. Beyond that, I'm sure there's like some really obvious ones that I'm missing, but nothing jumps out as far as like their rights. I mean, the expectations would be another one. Like, expect me to respond timely, in detail. Don't blow off questions. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Everybody's coming at this with a different level of experience. So if you have a question that you think is maybe like, oh, that's below his pay grade. No, it's not. I promise you. And you aren't the first person to have asked it. It's been asked before. So, and as far as my rights and my responsibilities are largely just professional. Like, I know what I want from a coach, and so my responsibility is to provide that for other people. And my rights are pretty minimal. Like,
Well,
I don't take abuse from people. I've had to deal with that
Okay.
before.
Oh, wow.
I do have the right to fire anybody that I don't want to work with anymore.
There you go.
Just like anybody has the ability to fire me whenever they want. There's no contracts involved or anything like that. I had to fire somebody last week, actually. I had
The
just
person who wrote you too much?
no, actually.
Oh.
It takes a lot for me to fire somebody, by the way. Usually it's like somebody fires themselves by missing a bunch of check-ins in a row and they just become non-communicative. I'm like, all right, whatever, moving on. But this person, it's like, wow, this is such a bad fit. Like, they signed up, they got their initial plan and had all these questions about like, okay, now how can we make this work where I don't really have to follow the diet? Do I have to join a gym? Can I just go 2 to 3 days a week? I'm like, goodbye. I'm actually going to do an unprecedented step here. I'm going to refund what you paid, and we're going to part ways and just never talk about this again. So
Yeah, it's kind of like, what were they thinking this was going to be like?
and they were a referral from a friend who told them what to expect. And still they're like, yeah, that sounds like what I need. And then they get it and they're like, okay, now I have some questions. And I'm like, oh dear. So I thought about that for a few hours, and I consulted my wife, and I'm like, in a situation like this, like, I just need to let this person go, right? She's like, yes. Like, okay. Again, sometimes you just need a gut check. You need somebody else who isn't really involved in the whole thing to kind of say like, yeah, that's unreasonable and you should let that person go. Okay, cool. So, yeah, I think that pretty well sums it up.
Cool.
I'm
Okay.
eager to get to the fun stuff now, whatever that might be.
Yes. Okay. Well, my next question is actually about something I can see behind you, and I want to hear about your guitars. How many do you have?
Oh, how many do I have? I think I got about 13, I think.
Wow.
They're all lefties.
Right?
I play backwards, and they're all cheap, save for like one. I got a PRS that is, you see that electric blue one right there?
I love that blue one. Yeah.
So it's the one right next to it.
Oh.
You can barely see it. It's kind of like pale green. That's my PRS, my Paul
Oh.
Reed Smith, who Paul Reed Smith doesn't really make cheap guitars. That's the cheapest one he makes. But as the most expensive one in my collection, I think it was like $800 or something like that. And you'll find a lot of people who spend $3 or $4 grand on a guitar. Like most of mine are like $200 to $400. They're cheap ass lefties. I'm
Do you have a favorite?
The PRS is kind of my favorite. Also, that electric blue one next to it on the other side, there's a darker blue one. That's my Ibanez. I don't know what it is, but it's actually the cheapest guitar I own. I think it was $180 off Amazon. And every song that I write that's like a hard rock song, that's the rhythm guitar for it. It's just awesome. It sounds amazing. It stays in tune no matter what I do. I love it.
So at a party, instead of asking you how you feel about that keto, it would be better to ask you about your guitars.
Please. Yes, just don't expect me to pick one up and play it because I'm just going to embarrass myself. I was...
when did you...
sorry, I'll interrupt just for a second here as an example. There's a song that I've been working on, trying to write, that I think on Sunday I sat down. Are you still there? Your screen's frozen.
Oh yeah, I think I'm here. I think
Okay.
I'm here.
All right. It's not,
you
you're
see me?
frozen.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. All right. Good. On Sunday, I sat down, I'm like, okay, now it's time. I got to do the guitar solo for this song. And, I'm no Eddie Van Halen. Let me tell you that for sure. But I can sit down and I can kind of know how I want it to sound and I can kind of clunk it out. And my recording program does this very insulting thing where every time I record a new take, it numbers it on screen. And by the time I got to the point where I had pieced the whole thing together and I was happy with how it sounded, it said something like 197. So that's not me playing the whole thing 197 times. It's like, okay, I got to go back and do this one measure like another 17 times to get it right and stitch it all together. But it was 197 total takes to get like 30 seconds of a solo. So my fingers are shot. I haven't played since then just because they take a few days to kind of get back to it.
Right. Yes, I don't play guitar, but I do play the ukulele, so I understand that part.
Nice.
So.
I have one. It's
Are
out of
you
frame, but
self-taught?
it's up there behind me.
Oh.
I made it myself actually at a little class.
Oh wow.
It's a cigar box
amazing.
ukulele, and it stays in tune for about 8 seconds once you start strumming it. Yeah, not the highest quality.
Yeah.
Self-taught on everything. Yes, I did have. Well, I think I took like 2 guitar lessons from a guy when I lived in Asheville, but I don't remember anything about those. Like they weren't super valuable. He was really cool. I'm just like I wasn't ready to learn at that point. So,
okay.
Yeah.
But on the piano, you're like legit trained.
No, self-taught there as well.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and that is why. Oh, go ahead.
How old were you when you first started?
Like 13, 14, something like that when I first started. My mom was taking lessons, and so I used her little books that she had, and I kind of went through those. I'm like, okay, cool. What else we got? And it just kind of just naturally clicked. But because I didn't take lessons, like I have horrible technique, like legit terrible technique, which is why I have pretty good forearms. Even though I never train forearms because I play with so much tension all the time. And so every time I sit down to play, like tomorrow's band practice, and we always call it like, hey, Darin, what do you want to do? And I'm like, okay, well, we just did that song, so I need something super chill now because I got nothing but lactic acid buildup in my forearms. So we got to do something slow or something where I could just play a few notes and let our guitarist kind of handle most of it or whatever. But yeah, lactic acid is the big enemy for me when I play.
Okay. How many members are there in your band?
There are 5 of us presently.
Oh, wow.
So it's me, and I only play piano in the band. That's the only thing that I'm good enough to do live. I can't play guitar live. My wife sings, and our friend is the other singer. We have Terry, who's our bass player, who was our bass player years back, and then stopped being our bass player because he got busy with other bands, and now that band broke up, so now he's back with us. And then Dustin plays acoustic guitar with us, and we found him because my wife taught his daughter at school, and so he kind of came through. They were doing an art show, and he came through, and she had some of our CDs out on her table in her booth at the art show for display. And he was like, "Oh, you do music?" She's like, "Yeah." So he's like, "Oh, I play guitar," and he showed a picture of his studio. And he's one of those guys where he has the guitars that are like hanging on the wall, and they're all like specially lit and everything like that. So not like that where they're just like hanging around like furniture, but he's pretty legit. So, and that adds, we've never had a guitarist in our band before, and it adds a whole different dimension that's kind of nice.
Wow. Do you have regular standing gigs, like you play this certain venue every week or every month?
The answer is no, and I would add to that, thankfully, and my wife would add to that, damn you, because playing live stresses me out, and she loves it. And not because we have like vastly different responsibilities or anything like that. Like I have to prepare, she has to prepare. It's just my response to it is to get stressed out by it. And the
Right.
solution there is to just do more of it and get over it. So, but we don't have any standing gigs because for the longest time we didn't have. Well, I mean, there was COVID, so we didn't do anything for a couple of years, and then
Right.
we were kind of slow coming back. So a lot of the places are kind of booked up with people that beat us to the punch. So we're trying to play some
Oh.
connections and worm our way back in, but it's a slow process. And Dustin and Terry are fairly recent additions to the band, so we're trying to get them up to speed on all the songs that we've been working on for the last few years too.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think I saw on your Instagram story, were you one time working on learning Italian?
Yeah, still am. I want to
Okay,
talk to you
you
about
guys
that.
are
I
going?
had questions for you as well
Okay.
because of your job, right? We should touch on that.
Yes.
Um,
Okay.
So you are, from what I understand it, you are an interpreter in the legal system.
That's correct. I work as a Spanish interpreter in the state courts in Nebraska and previously in immigration courts as well.
Okay. So the big question that I have for you there is, how did you learn Spanish? Was it like you grew up speaking it, or you lived in a Spanish speaking place for a while, or you just studied it?
I just studied it. I actually took German all throughout like junior high and high school. And I got to, oh yeah. So I got to this, I got to college and there were a few German people there, but there were all these people from Latin America and Spain. And so just by hanging out with them, I just kind of started to pick it up.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came back to Omaha and transferred to the university here, I was actually taking both German and Spanish at the same time, but it was eating up too many credit hours. And I thought, I'm not going to do anything with German.
No, probably not.
So I gave it up.
Spanish,
Yeah.
however, more than a little useful.
Yeah. Super helpful.
That is super cool because as I'm going through Italian, and I'm just using Duolingo, and I have a book over here that I use as a little reference too sometimes to help kind of fill in some gaps. Because Duolingo, you're probably familiar with it. It's all about repetition. It's like, we're not going to teach you a whole lot. We're going to like, okay, here's a little bit about this section on verbs that we're going to do. But now we're just going to throw a whole bunch of sentences at you and you're going to learn it that way.
Yeah.
And I like to go back and like be able to reference like things in tables and look at things. So the book is there for that. But as I'm going through and progressing it occurs to me, first of all, you learn a lot about English in doing that as well. Like, you think like, why do we have to conjugate all these verbs? And it's like, well, we do that in English too. It's just, it looks different. But also you understand like how big the gap is between being able to say some things and being fluent.
Yeah.
Like it is a massive gap. Oh my God.
And I think that an even bigger gap is that like, I learned Spanish in college. So I learned a very academic proper Spanish. And so the work that I have to do consistently is to keep myself informed of slang. That's the hardest part because especially if you're working on a drug case, and it's just like, I don't know those terms in those countries.
I can barely keep up with slang in English.
Right.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
I feel like I need to maintain adolescent friends throughout my whole life to keep myself informed.
In multiple languages. And I mean, the other thing is like, also like in Duolingo, they throw like male and female voices at you, like younger voices, older voices, but they're all speaking pretty clearly. Like it's all been professionally recorded and it's not like somebody talking a mile a minute in court.
Right. Well, and also like, right. And when you get over to Italy and the people and you say, where's the bathroom? And the person's like, oh, it's down the corner, down the house, blah, 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 blah. You're going to go, what?
And then I'm going to say, why didn't I learn the word for slower?
Well, now you know. Don't forget that one.
I do remember when I went to France many years ago, it's like 2005, learned just a little bit of French before going. But one of the phrases that I did learn was repeat slower, please. So
good job.
I went in for that. This was before like cell phones, so I didn't have like a translation app. So you're carrying around the little book with you. And, I don't care to go back to that.
Right.
But I'm up to like 170 days on Duolingo, so I'm keeping the dream alive.
Okay, good job. Yeah, I think the most important thing is as long as you expose yourself to it every day for at least 10 minutes, just
And the one thing that,
yeah.
that app is kind of hokey, but the one thing they do is they give you a lot of reasons to come and check back in for 5, 10, 15 minutes a couple of times a day. They have systems built
Oh,
in
good.
that kind of force that, like, because you're earning experience points and you can compete on other people on the leaderboard for how active you are. But then they're like, if you log in between these hours, then you get double experience for 15 minutes. And so they encourage just like these little bursts a couple times a day. But it's really smart, because if I just did it like even once a day or once every few days, it wouldn't be nearly as effective. But getting that little
Right.
blast where it's like, oh, I'm starting to forget this stuff. Oh, here's these words again. Great. And then that helps it stick.
So tell us something.
Mangio la carne.
Is that like enjoy the meat?
I eat the meat.
I eat the meat. Oh, okay.
That's like the one thing that I know how to, I need to know how to say realistically. So,
Okay.
oh, and
All right.
non mangio il pesce. I don't eat fish.
I don't eat fish. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
If I can say that, then I can kind of be safe if I go and order out somewhere.
Gotcha. I recommend reading Stanley Tucci's book, Taste. He talks about amazing places to eat in Italy. I don't know where you're going, but if you're going anywhere near the places he went, I was like, whoa.
Well, the goal and the trip that we had booked, and this was for June, that we ended up canceling because of like airline logistical crap. But that's the area that I'm researching, is like Florence, Tuscany, Cinque Terre.
Okay.
So like fly into
Those should be
Florence,
beautiful.
do a little bit of train ride, get a car for Tuscany, just drive around to random farmhouses and stuff like that. And it looks awesome. So I can't wait to do that.
Yay. Well, those are all the questions that I had.
No way. Did I pass the
okay.
test?
I mean, yeah, you did.
Oh, shoot.
I could ask you a few more if you want me to keep going.
I mean, take your pick. Like, what's your hardest one or your most controversial one that's left? I'm just gonna throw myself to the wolves here.
I think I had tried to get you to go to an aerial yoga class, maybe near Farragut one time, I think, and you said, "Oh, I have a funny story about that place."
Yeah. Oh, that's right. That's right. I did. So, it's not that funny. But
Okay.
I actually knew about that place beforehand, because and it's just kind of a weird coincidence here, because it's not far from here. But I was just absolutely so sick of Gold's Gym Farragut. I'm like, there's got to be another gym around here that I can go to. So I was just Googling gyms in the area, and I found this place, and I don't remember what it was called. I'm like, that's a gym, really? And I go onto the website and I look and I look and I look, and I'm like, oh, this is like an aerial silks place. Okay, cool. That's weird. I've never noticed it there. That's kind of strange. And then it was later that day, and it's really kind of out of the way. Like, you don't just drive by accidentally. Like, you're going here and then you turn into a residential neighborhood and then you drive past it. And yeah, it's like used to be somebody's house and now it's this.
Wow.
Later that day, I ended up driving past it to go pick up something for my wife from somebody who lived in that neighborhood.
Oh, that's
it was
crazy.
like the most random thing. I'm like, there's the place that I just Googled earlier today. Okay. And had never heard about before. So yeah. So like I said, not that funny,
I'm surprised
but kind
the
of
zoning
coincidental.
laws. Oh yeah. I'm surprised the zoning laws allow for that. That's interesting.
Maybe it's kind of like what the city doesn't know doesn't hurt them. Actually, they're not in the city; they're in the county. That probably has something to do with it as well.
There probably aren't any zoning laws in their area.
Which is why, like, as you go there, you pass by like I think it's like a tire shop, and there's always a taco truck parked in the same area too. So it's like the most random stuff. It's like, okay, aerial place, tire shop, taco truck. Sure, that seems perfectly legit.
Excellent. Yeah. You can get tacos after Ariel. Yeah.
I mean, it seems like a decent fit if you're going to go that route. I mean, is that one of your go-tos? Because you do Ariel all the time, right?
I don't eat tacos. They have too much fat, and I don't usually have enough carbs left in my day to eat corn tortillas.
That is such a coach-pleasing answer. I can't even tell you. That is
Yay,
brilliant.
I win.
That is brilliant. So, but one thing also, like, technically I'm the guest, but I think you should be able to plug yourself here. So if people want to follow you on social media, they can find you.
I am on Instagram as Aerial Abuela because it has both equal amounts of my aerial practice as an aerialist and probably too much of my grandchildren that I'm extremely proud of.
I don't think there's a such thing as too much grandchildren.
And then I think I'm on TikTok. Yeah, TikTok is Nebraska Hun. So it's like the first two syllables of Nebraska, but followed by HON.
That is hilarious. Yeah. I love that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, this was fun. This is fun. We should do this again. Never. It was fun, but I'm not sure how much else I have to offer. I mean, we could really dig in on some really, random bullshit and start talking about, because I could talk for days about TV shows and movies and stuff like that. We didn't even touch any of that, so we got to save some stuff for the redux of this.
Okay, my hope is that maybe this will generate more questions from your listeners and they'll want follow-up on certain things, but you don't need me for that. I mean, you could just kind of go through and read the answers yourself, or we could do this again someday. Either way, it's fine.
I'm cool with that. Yeah. So you listened to my my Wine Fest last week about not getting questions from people and that really obnoxious whining. So man, asking you shall receive. Apparently I just had to be a little baby about it, and suddenly I got a ton of questions from people. So and I get to ignore all those for this week and save them for next week because we did this instead. So
yay. Yeah. All right, I look forward to all those future episodes.
Yeah, me too. Producing them is a bit of a pain, but it's worth it. I have to keep the post-production stuff to a minimum because then it becomes too daunting. I'm like, yeah, I'm never going to do that. So
you're never going to get it out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you for taking the time to do this and putting the questions together. That was awesome. It was a lot of fun.
You are most welcome. Yeah, I really enjoyed it as well.
Cool.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for having me on your podcast. I appreciate it. Until next time, right?
Yeah.